The scripture I'm going to be preaching from this morning is Proverbs. We never get to read Proverbs, and I'm doing a bunch of them. Proverbs 13:20, 17:17, 27, 5 through 6, 9, 17, and 19. So hear now the words from Proverbs. Walk with the wise and become wise, for a companion of fools suffers harm. Better is open rebuke than hidden love. A friend loves at all times. Well meant are the wounds a friend inflicts, but profuse are the kisses of the enemy. Perfume and incense make the heart glad, but the sweetness of a friend comes from their earnest counsel. Iron sharpens iron, and one person sharpens the wits of another. Just as water reflects the face, so one human heart reflects another. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So I have a group of girlfriends from college that I get together with every summer. In fact, they're coming tomorrow, 2 of them, and we're flying out on the same flight on Tuesday morning together. So this is a very timely moment to be talking about this. We decided that it was just an important way for us to stay in contact with one another. After college, we spread out all over the country, and we were having babies and careers and raising the kids and, all the things. And we just didn't have time to always talk on the phone or stay as connected as we wanted to. So we made a covenant that every summer, as we were able, we would set aside at least 4 days, a long weekend, where we could just get together and do a long catch-up. A lot of times we've done this in Colorado when we go on long hikes and we just yap the whole way up and the whole way down, and then on the way onto the porch to have our coffee and into the dinners and the foods. One of the things we did in college is that I'm obsessed with dessert, and so I would make box cake mixes, the celebration kind, and then I would zap, I don't recommend this, it's probably so bad for you, but I would zap the little purchased icing in the microwave and pour it over the top. And then we would all sit around my coffee table with forks and we would just eat it straight out of the pan. And we have continued that very important sacred ritual. Although a few years ago, we looked around, actually it was a number of years ago, because I think it's when we were turning 40, and we were like, we are grown women, like maybe we could buy a cake from the bakery at this point. We have jobs, So now we do it with bakery cakes, which I think it's better than the, $1 ones that we used to do in college. What's great is that we are also different and our lives have changed so much. We're not talking about boys that we're dating anymore. We're talking about our kids and the things that are hard at work, and we're busy. And so sometimes during the year, the only thing that we can do is send Instagram memes to each other or a quick group text. One of my friends, though, Shelly, my best friend, we decided to go through spiritual direction together, training a number of years ago. And that meant that we spent a lot of time getting good at listening to people and listening for what God might be up to in the unfolding of their lives. And what happens when you spend a lot of time in that space is that you want more of that kind of listening, because you realize that so much of our lives are filled with chatter, small talk, noise, status updates. And while all that is really necessary for polite social life for us to get around, it sure isn't why we're here in the philosophical sense of things. So the next year on our girls' trip, Shelly and I said, hey, what if this year our ritual is that we start doing what we call a really long check-in? And we just take turns, and each of you gets a chance for as long as you want, an hour, 2 hours. We will all be silent, and you can just tell us everything that's on your heart. We want an update from you for the whole year. How are you? How is your soul? What is happening in you? How are you becoming? What is unfolding in you right now? What's on your heart? For as long as you want to talk about it. And we're just going to bear witness to you and listen. And so we did. All 5 of us took turns, and some of us took 30 minutes, and some of us took 2 hours, and that is based on personality. And after it was all over, what everyone said was, I feel so loved by this ritual. I feel so refreshed that I got to say all of that to you all. It felt so nice to just have you listen and not respond or comment, but just listen for that long. It helped me to hear myself. I think I now understand more of what I need to know because I got to say all these things in front of you. And that's because there's not a soul in this room who doesn't want a friend who bears witness to their life with honor and grace. So this is what it means to be an Anam Cara. Anam is the Gaelic word for soul, and Cara is the word for friend. So an Anam Cara is a soul friend. A soul friend is someone who listens to your inner life and honors it. A soul friend listens for that golden thread of God's presence in your life and helps you see it and hopefully hold on to it. A soul friend guides you towards becoming most fully yourself and knows that sometimes that comes after a bit of rambling and verbal processing and figuring it out as your friend simply listens along. It takes a while. It takes slowing down and unhurried listening. And it takes a willingness to be fully present to the person who's speaking. There are a lot of gifts that we have received from our Celtic Christian ancestors. We spent like 4 hours yesterday, or longer than that, 10 to 3, talking about just a handful of them. But for me, the keeping of the tradition of the Anam Cara is one of the greatest gifts they have given us. It ranks very high among them. So, of course, they didn't come up with this idea in a vacuum, and they don't own the idea. In fact, we can feel pretty certain that they learned of the practice of Anam Cara from the desert mothers and fathers, those wise sages of the 3rd to 5th century who mostly lived in solitude but also would allow visitors to come and see them. So if you haven't heard of the desert mothers and fathers, in that early period of the church, they felt called to be in solitude to listen to God. And so some of them would literally sit atop a rock all day and just meditate and pray to God. And they would allow people to come and visit them and ask them questions and seek counsel. And a lot of times the desert mothers and fathers would simply listen, for maybe an hour, and then give a very brief response, and then the person would go back to the city. So it's from this tradition of seeking the wisdom of a sage and offering a part of yourself in a story, and having that sage try to offer you some kind of loving care and soul care. This is where we get the tradition of spiritual directors. This is where it started. And it began first as something that was, yes, available to the people that were willing to walk all the way into the desert and ask for it. And later it became something that was just for priests and monks and nuns. This was like their elder who would be their confessor and their confidant and their guide. Obviously, I'm a spiritual director myself, as you maybe heard from Jonathan, so I obviously find great value in this work and in this lineage, and I'm honored to carry forward this tradition of Anam Cara. But I'm also so glad that now, in 2026, spiritual direction has evolved so that we realize that it is not just for priests and nuns and monks, but it's for everyone. And this is also what the Celts understood. The Celts realized that the practice of being an Anam Cara was actually central to the task of being Christian. To do this work is to follow Christ well. So certainly it began in the monasteries, but in true Celtic form, soon all the lay people were invited into this work, and notably women. And it became not just something in the monasteries, but something that people encountered on every road. Because everyone needs a soul friend, someone who walks with them and listens and helps them grow into their own souls. So there's a legend about Saint Bridget that comes from one of these monasteries. And it's worth noting that in the Celtic region, some monasteries were double monasteries, which means that they were both for men and for women. And in every case in which there was a double monastery, it was a woman who was in charge. And at this particular one, the head abbess was Saint Bridget, who was a fairly well-known person in Celtic history. So one of the young clerics who lived there came in, and they were there for a worship service, and as he took communion, she asked him about his Anam Cara, and he said, "Oh, yes, mother, my Anam Cara just died." And she said, "I knew as soon as you walked in here because you looked like someone without a head." And she told him, "Go be in prayer and search for another Anam Cara." Without a soul friend, we lose our heads. And we can lose our hearts too, because there's something about this deep sharing that we do with a soul friend that fully connects us to our hearts. And I think it's because soul friendship requires such vulnerability and openness, and to be cared for safely in that space can only expand your heart, not to mention heal it. And here's yet another thing that we can thank the Celts for. Did you know that while Rome required confession from people at least once a year, so they said every year you have to confess at least once, and they also required that you made the confession publicly. It was really kind of a public shaming situation. Well, the Celts saw this and they said, absolutely not, absolutely not. And they refused to do confession in this way. They instead said, confession is only to be done in the safe container with a person's Anam Cara, where a person would confess to someone who knows them and would meet them with love and grace and mercy. And it's for that reason that Rome eventually moved to the kind of private confession that is done to this very day. We can thank the Celts for that. Because, of course, this kind of vulnerability requires a feeling of safety and care that is so necessary and healing. Irish poet and priest John O'Donoghue wrote that an Anam Cara permits us to enter into this unity of an ancient belonging. Yes, this is what's happened. So I mentioned earlier that we feel pretty certain that the Celts learned soul friendship from the desert mothers and fathers. And part of that reason that we know that is because there's this well-known Celtic cross that depicts two desert hermits, Paul and Antony, breaking bread together. And what's even more interesting is that this panel, where you see that scene, is located at the very top, the apex of the horizontal beam. So in this picture, it would be the one that's at that very, very top space. And in the Celtic crosses they had that were kind of like stained glass windows where there were multiple little vignettes of different pictures of things going on, the placement of Paul and Antony, who were soul friends breaking bread at the very top, was as if to say, when you reach soul friendship, this is what true communion is. Communion is soul friendship, and soul friendship is, in fact, communion. Because, of course, true communion is the unity of ancient belonging, of being invited into the life of God by sharing in this love of God. And we receive that invitation most directly from Jesus, because Jesus is our Anam Cara. He is our soul's best friend. When we think about the life of Jesus, the unhurried time that he spent with people, the way that he listened, the way he noticed what other people missed, we see that he was an expert at this art of soul friendship. And that's because in Christ, we are both fully known and fully loved. I think of the woman at the well who went to the crowd and said, "Come and hear this man who knew everything about me." And it's like she couldn't believe that someone could know her so well, but more than that, I imagine she couldn't believe someone could know her so well and love her so completely. These proverbs that we read this morning, they help us understand that value of friendship. I imagine we've read or heard a few of these before. It feels not unlike what our parents probably told us, that we need to choose our friends wisely, that we become the company that we keep. And that's true. But what we really need to anchor us in life is earnest counsel. And for it to be earnest counsel, it has to come from someone we respect. And more than that, it has to come from someone that we trust. But what Jesus shows us is that while respect and trust are the bedrock, soul friendship really only becomes possible with love. We reach that apex of that horizontal beam of Christ's incarnation, when we share life together in a way that also shares this deep love for one another, this reverence for one another's becoming. And that's what I think the proverb is trying to guide us toward when it says, just as water reflects the face, so one human heart reflects another. Jesus has a heart that reflects our soul's image back to us. And that is why we need him. In his book, Christ of the Celts, John Philip Newell speaks of Jesus as our memory. He is the one who comes to remind us who we are. Because the problem is that we've forgotten. We have gotten a little lost, thinking that we're what we do, or what grades we make, or what job title is. Our job title is, or how much money we have in the bank, or how many followers we have, or our relationship status, or where we went to school, or fill in the blank of all the dumb things that we've been told makes us who we are. We've gotten lost enough to start believing that who we are is summarized by the worst thing we've ever done, or our most recent shameful mistake. And when we do this, we lose our way. We lose perspective. So Jesus comes to us as our Anam Cara in this place, and he invites us home. Come home, he says. Come toward the you who I know you to be. Reside in your essence and in your soul, and then from that place, you can make sense of what's happening to you. So just like water reflects the face, so Jesus reflects the image of God back to us on our face. Remember, he says. And when we do remember, it's because we know he's saying it to us from a place that is indeed filled with love. If it feels like this should be easy for us, it isn't. And that's probably in part because we're not taught to make sense of our lives from the perspective of our souls. We're told to make sense of our lives by all those other metrics that I mentioned. So no wonder we lose ourselves. Nothing in culture tells us to abide in ourselves in this way. So no wonder we also need a soul friend. We need someone who sees us more clearly than we can sometimes even see ourselves. John O'Donohue says that Jesus is the secret Anam Cara of every individual. In friendship with him, we enter that tender beauty and affection of the Trinity. In the embrace of this eternal friendship, we dare to be free. And part of that freedom is also learning to be honest with ourselves, to see ourselves as fully who we are, which means being totally beloved by God and also not perfect, which is fine. This freedom is why Proverb tells us that the well-meant wounds of a friend are far better than the kisses of an enemy. And we know this. Well-meant wounds simply means telling us the truth. It means saying, hey, you were not your best self when you did that. And I love you, and I have to tell you that that's true. And we know that when we hear that from a soul friend, because inside of us, we probably also already know that that's true. But we can hear it, and we can admit to it, because when our soul friend tells us, we know that they're saying it in love and with love and for love. So I want to end by saying two things to you. There's sort of two action items. One, it's good to know when you need an Anam Cara. And when you do, you can look for a spiritual director who is trained in that holy work. You may, however, have been listening in this conversation and realize that you already have somebody in your life who serves as an Anam Cara, and that is amazing. But if you need help finding someone who is trained in listening in this way, so that you can be in that container with a spiritual director and you can realize what that even is. You can start to watch that person model this kind of listening to your soul for you. Ask me, and I will tell you how to find a spiritual director. There are many, many wise and loving people that I know who have been called to this work, and they can be present to you. If you've been listening this morning and have thought, I don't know how to listen to my own soul, like I don't know what that is to bear witness to my own soul, much less anyone else's, that's just because you haven't been shown how. And honestly, that's the church's job, and we have maybe failed you in that. So this is what spiritual direction is for. You learn to listen to your own soul, and it just takes practice. It's not magical. You don't have to be born with like some sort of special set of skills. It's just like anything else, a practice. But you need a place where you can feel vulnerable and met with love. I have had a spiritual director for 17 years now, and I can tell you that she is one of the very most important people in my life. And I am so very grateful that in times in my life when things have been so hard, that she has held space for me and borne witness to me. And when times in my life things have been amazing, she's been somebody I can't wait to tell. She actually texted me this morning when I was in the hotel, and she said, I'm just thinking about you this morning, and I just wanted to check in. And I was like, it's probably because I'm about to go preach and mention you. So it's important. Anam Cara love really does heal us, and I wouldn't be who I am without her. So you need someone in your life who you can share the hardest things with. And that is sometimes a therapist, I will say. Therapists are great. And also, they are not the same as spiritual directors. So my advice is, please keep your therapist or get one. And also, you can also still get a spiritual director. They're not the same, and you really need both. You really do need both. It takes a village. So that's number one, is think about where you can be listened to, because your soul needs that. Your soul needs that. The second thing is this. It's good to know when you need to be a soul friend to someone else. And for that, you don't need training. You don't have to go to spiritual direction camp for that, right? You just need intention. Soul level conversations will sometimes come up in the flow of things, right? You've probably had this experience where you go to lunch or dinner with somebody and all of a sudden you did not know, but wow, you're in it now. You're in a deep conversation, and it just happens. And that's probably the Holy Spirit, and that's beautiful. But for the most part, these deeper conversations have to be invited. You have to clear out space for them to be able to happen, because so much in our lives crowds it out. So you're not going to be at a dinner party and stumble into this, most likely. You may stumble into the beginning of something that could be this. And if that happens, listen to whether it's on you to follow up and say, hey, I feel like you wanted to talk about something and we didn't really get to finish that. Do you want to go have coffee? I feel like you had more to say. Find a quiet place. Be attentive with your whole self and listen to what is being stirred up in your friend. You don't have to fix anything. You just have to love them. And the way that you love them in this Anam Cara moment is simply by listening to them. Let that love lead you, and you'll know what else it is that you have to do. So you don't have to be soul friends with all of your friends, but with some of them you do. And it's worth all the gold in the world for you to cultivate that friendship and honor it and make space for you to listen to each other. So take the trip, make the plans, set the phone call, carve out the time to love each other well. Tell each other the truth. Be each other's mirror, and let that reflection be a light that guides you more fully into being. I want to read this friendship blessing by John O'Donohue as a way to close, and I'll say it again as our benediction. But as I think about the way that we can embody Anam Cara in our own lives this morning, I pray that this will be an invitation and a blessing for you to do so. May you be blessed with good friends. May you learn to be a good friend to yourself. May you be able to journey to that place in your soul where there is great love, warmth, feeling, and forgiveness, and may this change you. May it transfigure that which is negative, distant, or cold in you. May you be brought into the real passion, kinship, and affinity of belonging. May you treasure your friends. May you be good to them, and may you be there for them. May they bring you all the blessings, challenges, truth, and light that you need for your journey. May you never be isolated. May you always be in the gentle nest of belonging with your Anam Cara. Amen.